Enshittification by Cory Doctorow, summarized by Detailed Book Summaries. Click on the subscribe button. Let us know in the comment the book you would love us to summarize for you. Chapter 1. The Birth of the Enshittification. Cory Doctorow begins by diagnosing a crisis. The internet, once full of promise, connection, and wonder, is decaying. He gives this decay a name: Enshittification, a vivid term that describes how platforms become worse over time, intentionally. In Doctorow's telling, we are living in the Enshittification, a new era where services we love are being hollowed out, degraded, and turned into profit machines that prioritize shareholders over users. What once felt like magic, free, open platforms, now feels like a trap. The same services we depend on are increasingly hostile, extractive, and indifferent to our well-being. Lays out the arc. These digital titans started by being good to us, their end users to draw us in. But once we were hooked, once network effects and lock-in took hold, things changed. They began to cater not to us, but to business customers, advertisers, sellers, and corporate partners. Then, in a final, corrosive stage, they squeeze even those business partners, siphoning off value for the company's own bottom line. This three-stage life cycle is the foundational narrative of Enshittification. Doctorow doesn't shy away from naming names. He looks at Amazon, Google, Meta, Facebook, Apple, Uber, and others, explaining how each, in its own way, has participated in this pattern. Amazon, for instance, began with low prices and huge selection, but eventually flooded its search results with ads and prioritized its own products, all while charging merchants steep fees. Google, once the world's friendliest search engine, manipulated its results so users would click more, not because they were seeking better answers, but because Google wanted to show more ads. Through these examples, Doctorow shows that this decline is not just random decay, it's engineered. Despite the bleak diagnosis, Doctorow's tone isn't entirely despairing. He argues that naming the problem is the first step. Once we see this pattern as a disease, we can begin to diagnose it and, crucially, treat it. He frames his book like a medical report, first the symptoms, then the causes, and finally, the cure. Chapter 2. How the Machine Works, Economics and Pathology. In this chapter, Doctorow delves into the systemic mechanics that drive Enshittification. He argues that it's not just greed or bad actors. The architecture of these platforms and the incentives they're built on make this decline almost inevitable. At the heart of the problem is monopoly power. These platforms are not just large, they are dominant in ways that make genuine competition nearly impossible. He introduces the idea of rent in a more radical sense than the everyday meaning. For these platforms, money isn't earned purely through providing services, but through owning the platform itself, extracting value simply because they control the infrastructure. That rent-seeking behavior means that companies don't need to keep improving things for users. They just need to find ways to monetize whatever they have. even if it makes the service worse. Doctorow also explains how platforms deliberately build barriers to exit. They make it hard for users to leave by preventing interoperability. For instance, by shutting off APIs, locking data, or building walled gardens. These tactics create entrapment. Once you're in, it's very difficult to get out without losing everything you've built or invested on a platform. Another piece of the pathology is how platforms degrade their relationships with business customers. Just like they first attract users, they then attract merchants and advertisers. But once those business customers are locked in by virtue of a large user base, platforms turn on them too. They raise fees, demand more, and extract more value. Over time, both sides are squeezed, users and business partners alike, leaving only a thin residue of value for anyone except the platform owners and executives. Doctorow also discusses how economic and legal systems amplify this problem. Weak antitrust enforcement, regulatory capture, and a lack of meaningful competition allow these platforms to operate with impunity. Without strong rules, they are free to degrade their services because there are few alternatives and because switching costs are high. Chapter 3: Entrapment, Surveillance, and the Necrotic Mall. This chapter paints a darker, more human portrait of what enshittification feels like in daily life. For users, it means being surveilled, manipulated, and commodified. Doctorow argues that the platforms don't just passively collect data, they actively tweak, nudge, and optimize our behavior for profit. Algorithms adjust in real time to maximize clicks, engagement, and ad exposure, often without regard for the user's actual interests or well-being. At the same time, the erosion of interoperability is deeply political. Doctorow calls for what he terms adversarial interoperability, the right for users and developers to rewire the digital world, to build alternative clients, and to move their data between ecosystems. But the platforms fight back. Through legal threats, DRM, and proprietary standards, they punish those who try to do just that. The result: a deeper entrenchment of power, where the only way to engage with digital life is through the lens of these massive companies. On the labor side, Doctorow doesn't ignore the people who build these systems. He reflects on tech workers, many of whom entered the field with idealistic motivations, a belief that they were building something meaningful for the public good. Instead, many have become instruments of exploitation, caught in a system that prioritizes profit above all. These workers not only witness the enshittification, but are sometimes complicit in it. Yet, they also hold potential power as a force for change if they organize. Doctorow frames the current digital public square, social media, search engines, marketplaces, as something like a diseased mall. Once vibrant and useful, it is now hollowed out, corrupted, and extractive. The degradation is not a bug, but a feature. Platforms were never built to last forever as public commons. They were built to be harvested. Chapter 4: The Turning Tide, Diagnosis and Hope. Here, Doctorow shifts from diagnosis to prognosis. We are not powerless. The breakdown is deep, but not irreparable, and he outlines a roadmap for how we might disenshittify the digital world. A central pillar of his solution is regulation. He argues that we need more robust antitrust enforcement, not just to punish bad behavior, but to break up or limit the size of these platforms. If platforms are too big to fail, they are also too big to care. We need laws that challenge their dominance, not laws that merely nudge them to act more ethically. But regulation alone isn't enough. Doctorow pushes for interoperability rights, the ability for platforms to interoperate, for users to leave without losing their data, and for independent developers to rebuild tools that serve people instead of shareholders. He sees this as reclaiming the immune system of the internet, restoring its capacity to heal itself. He also believes in the power of labor organizing. As tech workers recognize their shared interests, not just with each other, but with users, they can become a force for rebalancing power. By negotiating rights, pushing for worker protections, and insisting on platforms that respect public value, they can help redirect these companies toward more humane ends. Finally, Doctorow highlights the role of civic engagement and activism. We, the public, must demand our digital rights: data portability, interoperability, fair competition, and strong privacy protections. His message is firm but optimistic. We don't have to wait for benevolent billionaires to act. Change can come from the bottom up if people organize, legislate, and build. Chapter 5: A Vision for Disenshittification. In this final chapter, Doctorow paints a picture of what a re-enlightened internet could look like. Not just a technical fix, but a social transformation. He imagines a world where platforms are not extractive fiefdoms, but interoperable public spaces that serve people rather than profit. He argues for restructuring digital economies so that platforms don't have the unchecked power they do today. This means not only regulating their size and behavior, but also rethinking business models. Perhaps platforms should be more like public utilities or cooperatives, rather than rent extraction machines. Interoperability becomes more than a technical demand. It's a democratic one. Users should have meaningful choice, not just superficial switching options. We should be able to take our data, our communities, and our relationships with us, because digital life shouldn't be a gilded cage. Doctorow also emphasizes that privacy and data rights are non-negotiable. The right to move freely, to control one's own data, and to choose how we engage online are foundational to resisting enshittification. It's not enough to complain about annoying ads or bad algorithms. We need structural protections that limit the power of platforms to exploit us. Finally, he ends with a call to action rooted in solidarity. Disenshittification is not a one-person fight. It requires alliances across sectors, users, engineers, policymakers, labor, activists. Through collective will, he suggests, we can not just slow the enshittification, but reverse it. Doctorow's vision is hopeful. He doesn't insist that big tech can be reformed from the top alone, but he firmly believes that the public has the resources, legally, technically, morally, to reclaim and rebuild a healthier internet. Click on the subscribe button. Let us know in the comment the book you would love us to summarize for you.